Hello and welcome to Quiet Before. I'm Ed Lin. I'm here today to speak with giant robot founder Eric Nakamura. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm good. Wonderful day here in Los Angeles.
Oh, is Los Angeles known for having wonderful days?
72 and sunny all the time.
But having each day being similar to the next and not really having any seasons, doesn't that affect your psyche in terms of going through cycles? It's just one continuous line.
And it forces you to do the different things every day. You can't rely on the weather to govern your moods or things that you do or something like that. I mean, if every day is like the one before, it's up to you. Maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure. That's kind of how I look at it anyway. I don't care if there's sun out or no sun at all. Like I could be in Point Barrow, Alaska, I guess in the winter when it's dark all the time and still do what I do. You know what I mean?
When I think about the punk bands that emerged from LA and New York, the LA ones, there's always a certain note of kind of upbeatness or happiness. Like even when Bad Religion is pointing out problems and stuff, there's always some kind of uplift to it. And New York is just completely cynical.
I think the sound, right? If you think about it, maybe some of those, it depends, but I mean, beachy, coastal, beachy kind of a thing. There's punk rock that's sort of like that, right? It's just yeah, it's in the sound, maybe not in the lyrics, but the sound. I always think that some of that sounds really positive, or, you know what I mean? Maybe not Black Flag all the time, but I don't know. There's something about that to me. But yeah, New York also has that whole Lower East Side, dirty, noisy, I guess it's punk rock, but kind of noisy, that whole vibe, the Sonic Youth, but all the smaller bands that were less popular, like Railroad Jerk, maybe, or, you know what I mean? There's a whole bunch that were Dust Devils, kind of noisy, that grindy
Live
sound.
Skull,
I feel like that is more New York to me as a sound than because there wasn't a lot of that to me in LA. That to me was a very New York thing.
I feel like
and pretty badass, because it was just I could think of the streets with rats and dirty water and all that stuff that's New York City to me, right? That's the lower part of New York at the time. And that sound to me, it really epitomizes that vibe. This is early 90s New York, I guess, or something like that. I don't know. Maybe there's that. Then I feel like that sound that I really liked wasn't quite here. You know what I mean? We didn't quite have that here.
You know what? I mean, it's a sound of the subways and public transportation and honking and everything. Nobody honks in LA.
Nobody honks in LA.
Yeah. Unless it's road rage. If you're willing to go there.
I don't know. I think you're probably right. Actually, New York probably honks more.
All the time.
But is it because of taxis?
I wouldn't say taxis. I think that
we don't have those.
New Yorkers are really into expressing themselves. So you gotta honk, say, you cut me off, and someone will honk back. Yeah, and so what?
There is that. Yeah, New York's got a really tough. To me, it's definitely tougher, and maybe that's from seasons. The cold winter versus whatever. Maybe there's that, but I don't know, man. People honk here too. I think they honk more than ever right now. People are intolerant of everything. So I think people are honking more than ever. And I think part of that might be from the Uber people, the Uber driving and food pickup, because, you know what I mean? I think there's more just stop right in the middle of the road and get out and go get the food. And I'm okay because I'm a food delivery person. You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of honking because of that. There's more people just kind of assuming they know they could just make their own rules now. And that's kind of how it was for maybe 2 years ago, right? You could do that. These days, traffic's even worse. So I think that's making it worse. And people are just not willing to take shit anymore. They're just mad.
Well, also because many New Yorkers have moved to LA, and we've New Yorkized LA quite a bit.
Maybe. Maybe.
So along these lines, I want to like take where you are now and like go back to the roots of it, because like the giant robot gallery, like the artists that you featured, and the art shows that you have, that speaks to a very visual kind of focused person. Like, is that where you kind of see your creative genesis, like in visual kind of forms?
Creative genesis?
Yeah.
Uh, Probably. I mean, we're talking now, we're gonna kind of go back to like high school, I guess.
Or even earlier, like your
Sure.
earliest memories of like visual images.
Oh,
Like,
I
well,
was
I
I
know
was
you
the,
didn't major in like visual arts, but like there was always that kind of aesthetic that you had, and I'm just wondering where that came from.
oh man. I was the kid that drew a lot, right? Like that was all the time. Free time was always me drawing something, however good or bad. It was drawing and drawing and drawing. And then you go to elementary school, then you get like positive reinforcement, like, oh, you're the one that can draw really well. And then you become like, oh, known in your elementary school as the kid who draws pretty well, right? In your grade. There's always one person in their grade who draws pretty well. So I was that for a while.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I think till I was in sixth grade, maybe I was the kid that can draw well. And then, but then all of a sudden when middle school happened, all the schools start to mesh together. There was some kids that were amazing, like so much better. And I was just like, holy like I'm no good at all. Like, look how good, like drawing perspective and stuff at like, seventh grade or whatever like that. It was kind of amazing to see. And I realized how like bad I was relatively, but still I enjoyed it. So I guess that's where it all kind of starts, drawing stuff like that and watching cartoons and doing the things that everyone else does, collecting toys, right? Just drawing pictures of your toys, drawing pictures of cars, spaceships, robots, rockets, shit like that. That's kind of what I was into. Oh, war scenes, right? Drawing war scenes. Hilarious, right? Literally drawing war scenes. Yeah.
So
And
at this
comics,
point,
right? Comics. I
yeah,
forgot.
comics.
Comics, really important, is reading comic books. And of course that leads to wanting to draw comic books, or draw like comic books. And
Hmm.
then just kind of go from there.
So at what point does punk rock enter the picture?
Oh, I think neighborhood kids. I think I was into like, like in what, fifth grade or something. You're wasn't even earlier. You're kind of getting into music, right? So it's like, what's your, like what cassette did I have? I had a Journey Escape. Like older cousin had some music I liked, like Devo and stuff like that. Devo, Journey Escape, and then of course the bad kid in the neighborhood, who's now like in and out of jail, in another state. He, yeah, neighborhood kid I befriended. His first albums were Black Flag, and he had the Suicidal Tendencies album on vinyl, and he gave them to me.
Oh.
Yeah, and I had like Damaged, Black Flag, and I don't know, like the Suicidal Tendencies album, and really into that. Then there's like the punk rock radio station, the college radio station. So was listening to that, and I can't remember what age. I mean, God, is that like fourth grade or fifth grade, or I don't remember, something
I
like
remember
that.
Damage came out in '79.
Yeah. So I can't remember how. I mean, I don't know if he had them brand new, but he had Jealous Again and Damaged, the two, and he gave them to me. I still have those because he gave them to me. I still have those exact copies. And then he also had the Suicidal Tendencies album, which was just too epic. And he gave those to me too. So kind of comes around that time. And I'm not still like pretty young to be listening to that, I think, but that's kind of what it was, kind of like listening to those things. And they were on vinyl, like, their records, and really cool. Like the visuals on everything were just amazing and kind of, I don't know, scary and interesting at the same time. And then knowing that Suicidal Tendencies is just like a band in Venice, like relatively local, and that you see people like the guys that are, if you ever look at that album cover on the back, there's pictures of like people wearing the shirts that are silk screened on, like actual button down shirts, but the back has like a art, Suicidal Tendencies art thing on the back. I don't know if you remember that. It's like skulls and all kinds of stuff. There are people dressed like that because I'm in West LA, so it's not far from Venice. I would see people dressed like that. I would be like, oh, these are like guys that are on that vinyl record, but they're older, a little bit older than me. But I remember and then kind of like just being exposed to that, but being still young.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
I mean,
kind
I'm
of
an East Coast guy, so I mean that record confused me because I was like, "What's up with these bandanas?" I mean, nobody wears those. That's weird.
yeah, it's kind of a hybrid of just punk rock, but also like gang culture, I guess Latino gang culture. Just Venice is like a melting pot, but there's just almost every group of person that was there: Black, Latino, white, Asian American. It was all kind of all there, a little bit mixed. And Suicidal Tendencies was kind of like that, actually. There's like the audience was pretty mixed, right? There's like Latinos hanging out, but it was just, I think to me, it was just punk rock and a little bit of their street gang kind of vibe. It was different than me, but that's kind of what I noticed about it. And there's always like the Asian or two that are like there too. And I'm like, oh, there's an Asian guy dressed like that too. It was always like that.
So around this time, like who are your peers? Are they kind of the bad kids or like the artistic kids? The Asian kids, like,
It
or
was a
were they
mix.
all separate and distinct?
Now they were separate, but I had friends like all kind of a little bit more mismatched or just kind of mixed up. I think the local bad kid, white kid, right? Or is a local bad kid. I mean, he was like, you go to his house and it was, it's punk rock. Like that house he's got parents, but they kind of have loose supervision.
Wow.
Very loose supervision. And other friends were other Asian American kids, right? A lot of supervision for the most part. Yeah, I mean, just kind of a mix of different things, different peoples. I think that's kind of what I remember the most is just, having different friends. They didn't all blend. They were all like compartmentalized here and there. And but that's kind of what I guess made me in a way, because some of the other, like, let's say the Asian American kids, I think they're friends with other Asian American kids, but I think that was generally their friendship circle was just this really tight network. And mine kind of had like friend from the neighborhood, friend from school, and friend from here and there, you know what I mean? Like different places. I think that's kind of was, kept it more varied for me. Because I don't think I quite lived in the same area as the Asian American kids, right? They all lived in a certain area. I was like half a mile or a mile away, maybe. I was a little bit further away. And as a little kid, that's a far distance, actually. You can't just bicycle there. You can, but knowing that you have to come home is kind of a drag, and you're going to come home alone in this weird direction, right? Stuff like that. So you hang out with a neighborhood bad kid who lives 1 block away. You know what I mean? It's a little easier. Yeah.
So I'm sure that around this time, your parents are aware of your artistic side.
Oh yeah,
Is that
drawing and
something?
stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Did they encourage that, or just kind of let you do your own thing passively?
Nah, they encouraged it. Not hardcore, but a little bit. Like I went to an after school art class.
Wow.
And it was okay. Looking back, I'm like, I guess it was something. Like was it really great? I don't know, but it was something. And it was taught by like working artists, which I work with a lot of working artists today, but I kind of understand. I'm like, oh, they're the working artists who are probably like, doing their thing, not killing it, but doing their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're teaching at the same time. Like there's a lot of artists that do that today that I know. They're teaching, but they're pursuing their art, and all of it kind of fits into this kind of world for them that's they have an art career, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if you're just making art. If you're teaching art, that's still an art career. So it all kind of comes together as a way to survive off of the art, So I think I went to a school like that felt very working class,
Mhm.
like it was very working class, actually, thinking about it. It wasn't like it was very working class. That's what I could think about it.
Was this a daily kind of thing or just like once a week?
No, maybe it was once or twice a week.
That's still
Yeah.
pretty often.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'm thinking back about it. I remember that. And usually it's at night, maybe I don't know. I don't remember what time, but maybe, I mean, I'm guessing, like, was it a 5 to 8 p.m. thing, or I don't remember. Maybe it's something like that. Or was it after school? Maybe it was 4 to 6 or 4 to 7. Because yeah, you had to have dinner, right? 4 to 6, maybe. It must have been 2 hours. 4 to 6
Yeah,
is my
yeah.
guess.
And I'm
Yeah.
I'm sure these art teachers didn't like pander down to the kids. I'm sure they were real with you guys about doing art.
One guy was amazing because he was a working cartoonist, but he was from New York. And my memory of this guy was he looked like Howard Stern, right? He had this long curly hair. He was hairy. He might have wore tank tops. He was kind of droopy a little bit, but he was, maybe a little bit dirty.
Mhm.
But he was a working cartoonist, and I mean, he was working in it, and he was like, he had the New York, what you don't have, that New York accent. He had the Brooklyn. When he spoke, I was like, oh, this guy is like not like me, He's from New York, like hardcore, and then but he was one of the teachers, and he was cool because he was, yeah, I would say very real, but he was a working class artist.
Mhm. Okay, so after this after school program and you're getting a little bit older, it's like high school and I don't know if you were, but were you already thinking like what kind of career can I have? What should I major in school? Like, should I think about the pre-law, pre-med route kind of thing? Was that ever on the radar at all?
Sure. I have everybody. I mean, Asian American kid. Yeah, you're pretty much ingrained to do that, right? Pretty much. If you're just like an average Asian American kid, your parents want you to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, right? It's not pursue art or pursue
Yeah,
something esoteric or even athletics. It's not.
yeah,
It's usually not those things. It's definitely something that's white collar, I guess you would say, right? White collar. It's not being a writer. It's nothing creative. So yeah, for me, it's like I don't like, what was like, I know I had to think about those things, but I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to be a dentist. I wasn't going to, be a lawyer. Like that wasn't going to happen. You know what I mean? I could say it, but I already knew, like, I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm not going to do these things. It's just not going to happen. But I didn't know what I wanted to do.
so you knew the
I like
X's, but you
photography.
didn't know what direction.
Yeah, I like photography a lot, but I was just like, that's like this, kind of this, no, don't do that. Kind of not encouraged to necessarily just to pursue photography. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, my parents were at that point, I think they were kind of like, do something you like, but we hope it's a doctor. We do hope it's being a lawyer. We do hope for these things, but I think that just wasn't going to happen. I think they might have figured that out at some point soon, that I wasn't going to make it. But then, photography became okay. Oh yeah, go do photography. You're
Mhm.
pretty good at that. Go do it. I think was kind of what it's turned into, maybe a little bit of a fallback.
Mhm.
Okay, you're not doing these things. Well, I'll take pictures, but maybe that was kind of what they were resigned to a little bit.
So how did you get a camera and everything?
Oh, I think my uncle had stuff, and I borrowed his in the beginning, and I liked it. I did a photo class in high school, and just enjoyed it. That was fun.
Like developing your own
Oh,
stuff in a
sure,
dark
all
room?
that stuff, taking pictures, developing it, and like I remember doing it all, and I remember. I wasn't very. How good are you going to be in high school as a photographer? I wasn't very good, but I was really into it, and just
Yeah.
experimenting and pursuing just different aspects of it, shooting different kinds of pictures, and all of which suck. Like if I look back at it, yeah, it all sucked. But
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, but like so much, like so many things, like punk rock, the enthusiasm is so much more
yeah, I
important
was
than the
really
actual
into it. So I
results.
was just taking pictures, and I realized today, if I could look back, trying to do like art photos, shooting pictures of plants, shooting pictures of like things. The coolest thing to take pictures of or the best way to go at it looking back was to not care and just take pictures of people and friends and don't worry about the backgrounds and don't worry about so much the lighting of this and all that. I mean, that's important and all, but the pictures that would have been the most valuable in high school would have just been pictures of friends, which I didn't take many of, right? Those aren't ones you take because I was trying to do art, like I was trying to take pictures of plants and leaves and bugs and all the shit that I don't care about. But if I just had pictures of friends or people, I probably would have cared more. Like if I would have taken a picture of teachers in the class during class, that would have been interesting. I would have been like, oh, look, I have a picture of this class and look what everyone's dressed like. And I think
Wow.
all those things would have been more interesting to see today than plants, bugs, and flowers, which I can go to my backyard and shoot plants, bugs, and flowers that you might not even think it's any different than it would have been the same bugs and flowers from high school. Like, I don't think they evolved and changed the way their hair looks or changed the clothes they wore or the flowers all of a sudden change colors or anything like that, right? It would have been the same ass shit.
Well, maybe
But,
due to climate change, the variety of bugs
oh,
and
but
flowers
dead
might have
plants,
changed.
you mean? You mean the dead plants and dead flower pots and stuff like that. I got you. But yeah, I think just capturing the moments
Hmm.
of people actually was of the highest value, which they didn't encourage.
And photography was so much different back then because you had to be more intentional because you had a limited amount of film. You knew you had to develop it. It's not the instant digital kind of thing it is now. And
Yeah.
so back then,
So
there had
you're
to be a certain cutoff before
encouraging art, and
right?
that art was not good. Like I mean, you do it because it's a process and you're learning and there's this journey. But man, if the teacher just said, hey, go take pictures of your friends and just here's 10 rolls of film, take pictures of your friends, that would have been of the highest value.
10 rolls of film with your friends? Come on.
Or okay, how about two? But I don't even have that. I don't. I have
Mm.
tons of pictures of crap, like, and I still have it all, but it's nothing to look at. But if it's just pictures of friends, that would have been cool to look at. I would have been like, wow, this was a good friend of mine then. I don't know what happened to him, right? But now I'm like, oh, look at this plant. I don't know where it is, where it was, what kind of plant it is. I don't even know. And I don't even care. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, yeah,
if,
yeah.
if a teacher today just that was the photo assignment, take pictures of your friends, 2-3 rolls of it, go, that would be the smartest thing to do. Because over time, that's going to have the highest value.
Were you
Like
taking
I took
pictures
pictures of beer bottles. Like here's a
Yeah.
beer bottle sitting on a thing. And it's like, why am I taking pictures of a beer bottle? Like a Grolsch beer bottle. Like, you know, oh, the
Girls'
lighting
beer
in the
bottles
bottle
actually
is
look
really
kind of
nice.
cool.
It's like, no.
They look kind of cool because they have the ceramic stopper.
Yeah, that's why you take a picture of it. But that's the same bottle today as it was then, isn't it?
Eh. Well, actually now it's a United Germany, so it's probably different from the one that was made in West Germany.
Oh, I see.
Oh
Maybe.
well,
Yeah.
maybe.
See, those are things. But anyway, yes, I did photo. I loved it. But then later on, I just kind of kept going with it through like high school and then college and
Mhm.
outside of college.
When did you start taking pictures of gigs? Because I know you have early pictures of Nirvana, the kind
Maybe
of CDs coming out.
88 or 89,
Uh-huh.
around there. I just right after high school. I graduated in 87. And okay, so I shot pictures of friends' bands. That's kind of cool. But the problem is, again, from schooling, I took pictures of bands and performance. But do you know the best part of the performances are? It's not of the band, it's of the people who went to see the band, right? That's where the value is in the pictures. Like if you have a picture of the band, but you also have a picture of the crowd with the band, that's the best stuff. That's the best photo because you're capturing the moment, you're capturing the scene. The scene is the people, not the band, right? It's the people who kind of supported it or was into it and the world around it. That's where the wonderfulness is. It's the community. And I took pictures of performance because that's what I was taught, right? I was like pursuing photography and all of it's performance based. It's like shoot the performer, shoot the basketball player, shoot the football player. Here's how you shoot a baseball player sliding into back into first base, right? Or you know what I mean? Like I'm learning all these things, but then none of it is shoot the fans. You know, like not once did that ever come up, right? Shoot the fans. It's like the fans are where it's at. Yeah, interesting, right? That's kind of like what my reflection of it all is like my favorite photos are ones where I see the crowd and the band or just the crowd. Yeah, so those are like funny things that I look back on. It's the community, not the actual just the band, because the band could be in any city. They could be in like Antarctica playing a show to nobody. It'll look, you know, I'll just take it and I'll be like, God, it looks exactly the same. But the people around it are what's interesting. Right. And that's kind of what I learned now. But I mean, my pictures are kind of a mishmash of a little of both, but I wish more of the people that went to see the show. Yeah, I was shooting bands from like 88 to maybe I stopped around 90, I don't know, 96.
Wow.
Maybe around there. I don't know, 95, 96. I probably just burned out on it a little bit. Oh, Giant Robot.
Oh,
Giant Robot started, doing Giant Robot. So maybe I started shooting less bands and maybe something like that. Maybe it went a little further, 97, 98. I can't remember.
But, you know, also Britpop was taking over and like it kind of killed punk, you know? I don't know. But
in New York,
anyway,
maybe.
Let's stay
in
back.
New York, maybe.
New York, baby.
Yeah, in New York.
Let's pull back a little bit.
Oh, Britpop in LA. Did that happen here?
It totally Oasis ruled LA. Come on. They did. They did. I mean, maybe you weren't into it, but you know, it really did. It just rolled over all of America.
What?
But, yeah. In any case, let me just continue with
Okay.
Okay, so but meanwhile, you're into photography, going to these gigs and stuff, but you are an East Asian studies major.
Oh, that's later. I mean, I was going to SMC for a while. Santa Monica College, like a junior college. And that was, you know, also a journey because UCLA was 2 years. And I think I did 3.5 at Santa Monica College and then a semester at San Francisco State. But yeah, that part of the journey to me is actually more exciting and more interesting than the UCLA part.
Okay, let's hear about this journey, this interesting
That's the best part. I think Santa Monica College is because it was like a continuation of high school, but with different people and a whole different scene kind of a thing or different world. And I kind of thought that was actually where I probably grew up, like where I started to figure things out, because I don't think I figured anything out in high school. I think I just figured out get out of high school. But I think the community college part is where I started like thinking and learning things for the first time. You know what I mean? Really learning things that matter or mattered. And I think that's kind of what's valuable about it all. Right. So like things like I went through high school not learning how to really write. Right. I didn't learn how to write in high school. How come I was like, I don't understand how I got through that with the writing skill I actually had from high school. Like, I don't know how I got past it all. Like I got an A in English. And how did I do that with the writing skill I had? That's an example. It's like, wow, I feel like that failed me a little bit. And then at junior college, I had a really great teacher who I wrote, you know, I had to write essays and essays and essays, and they were so shitty. And he one day says, hey man, let's after class, let's go hang out and let's just talk about your essay and let's just talk about this. Wow. And he actually went through line by line and go, why are you saying this? What does this mean? And then what does this mean? And he went through every bit of it and just went, this whole part right here has nothing to do with anything. Why is it in here? And I'm like, I don't know. I just thought I'm supposed to put shit in here. Like, I don't know. and he was like, well, this got nothing to do with it. And he just broke every sentence down as to, and he didn't care about the structure. He just more cared about syntax. And he was just saying, why is this in here? Why is that in there? And, you know, what has this got to do with your whole topic? And your whole topic now is just thrown off with this. And he would just like, we went through the whole thing with a fine tooth comb. Nobody ever did that for me. And after he did that, a light bulb went off where I was like, oh, every sentence matters. Everything matters, you know, in this writing. Like if you're writing an essay that's only, I don't know what it was, 500, 600 words. I mean, every sentence will matter. And there's, you can't just pad shit with bullshit. Because I thought it's okay, because I was getting past it by padding things with bullshit, right? Like just writing crap that doesn't even mean anything. that maybe sounded witty for a moment, but actually has no meaning. I think that was kind of maybe I learned that in junior college. You know, in the photography, same thing. I had a great photo teacher who just kind of, you know, really took me through so many things about doing photography. And he was really great. What a great teacher. Anyway, so that was really important. And that's where I started learning how to be good at photo, not just taking a bunch of pictures, but being good at actually composing shit and hopefully doing things well. And I think, yeah, you know, and maybe that's different than telling a story exactly, but I was trying, that was the photographer teacher was leading me into telling the story. His name was Jim Rubesman, amazing dude. But he was like a, you know, nominated multiple times for Pulitzer Prize, which he said was complete nonsense. He was like, that doesn't mean anything. Because everybody gets that if you're out there shooting pictures. And I was like, okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's just one of those things that he was a true critic of, you know, like he was honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, good teachers showing you how to do stuff is like one thing, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't care. And it sounds like you actually learned to really care.
Oh, that at that point I did for the first time, but it's because they cared too. I think they were just like, what, you know, why are you doing this like shitty like work or whatever? You're capable of better, maybe. And then for them to sit with me for even, I think it was like 20 minutes, the guy smoking a cigarette outside and we're just sitting on the grass and he's like just going through stuff with a pen and he's like, what is this? And what is that? And I don't understand this. And he goes, can you explain it? You know, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like sitting there going, I don't know, man. I just did it. But he was just cared enough to break it down sentence by sentence to the end and said, okay. Or if I had a good sentence, he would circle and go, this is good. Like this totally explains this, but how come you don't explore that more? You know, just little things like that. And same with photography, that teacher was just same thing. He'd be like, okay, why'd you shoot this? Why'd you shoot that? And, you know, how are you telling the story with these pictures? And are you missing something in the story with these pictures? And so he would be like, oh, maybe you're missing this. And we'd discuss it, tons of discussion. And the reason why that worked was he was such a harsh teacher to many. Everybody quit the class except for me. So I had him for a semester, just one-on-one, because everybody quit the class.
That's amazing.
Literally. Yeah. So I was literally one student, the only one in the class. So I had a whole semester where I was just one-on-one instruction. And I was his prize student, right? That semester, I was his prize student. So I did whatever he said. And I was like, you know, I was into it. And it made him better, right? Like having a one-on-one teacher like that, it's like a mentor class was once a week maybe or something, twice a week. I had a mentor for an hour, you know what I mean? Yeah. And who gets that? And that was like, they didn't cancel the class and I'm the only student. They could have canceled it and they didn't.
Well, they probably already paid them and they were like, oh, well.
Yeah. So like we would walk around campus and take pictures sometimes and he would talk to me and go, look over there.
Oh my
And I'm looking and he's like, look at the lighting there. And then like a person walks through the light and goes, see when that person hit that light for that moment, that's where the photo is right there, you know? And I'd be like, whoa. Or we would go outside and, you know, and I had to memorize how to set your camera. Just, he would look at the light and goes, look at that shadow over there. Well, what would you set your camera at? And I'd be like, oh, that would be a f8 at 250, you know? And he'd be like, I think you might be off by a little bit. And, you know, he would tell me what he thinks and says, you know, when your camera runs out of batteries, what are you going to do? Right. So it's just stuff like that. Having that like one-on-one thing was, man, that's just valuable. I didn't have any of that at UCLA.
Oh, geez.
Nothing. Oh, of course not. I'm just a number at that point.
I mean, you're sitting in a lecture hall with like 200 other people.
Right. And you're just a number. I mean, teachers don't care as much. I mean, they care, but not like that.
Mean, it's impossible for them to care for every single person there. It's like, there's no way. There's not enough cigarettes to smoke.
Exactly. Nobody, they just didn't care. And, you know, they're pursuing their own PhDs and writing books and all this stuff. Junior college instructor is just, it's a different, they're not pursuing writing books, I don't think, at that point. Like they're not PhDs trying to do scholarships or scholarly articles. They're just trying to teach, right? That's like on a collegiate level, they're trying to instruct. So I think that's kind of cool. Like looking back, that's just pretty valuable. I got lucky, you know. I had like private school at a junior college, and I think it was probably $100 a semester.
Wow.
At that time, right? I think it was like something like that, $87 a semester or something weird, like low amount. Pretty rad.
Wow, you can't even get a mentor these days at that.
You can't even buy a book, like a school book anyway. Yeah.
Okay, so you know, your
Sorry,
East Asian.
that's a long diversion, man.
It's good. You know, we'll fix it in post if this needs to be.
Okay.
So okay, your East Asian major. I'm just thinking, you know, were you thinking along the typical Asian American escape route of like, hey, I know when I graduate, I'm just going to go to Asia and like figure out something there.
I thought about going to Japan to teach English.
Jet
But
program stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that, but I just did that major because there was no Asian American studies major at the time. It didn't exist yet. And I wanted it.
Wow.
I actually went to see what do you call it? A counselor? Because I guess if you're a really good student, you can do a make your own major kind of a
Yeah.
thing. And I was like, Asian America, I'm here. I want to do it. I remember that the counselor saying there's not enough people that want to do Asian American studies, so therefore it doesn't exist. That was kind of the argument. And I was just like, oh man. And while I was going to school at UCLA, there was a Chicano Studies Now like protest to make Chicano studies, which happens. Then Asian America wasn't for maybe a few years later. There was a minor, but there was not a major at UCLA. And it was one of those things that I was just like, that's what I wanted. So second place is East Asian Studies. I mean, it's not anything alike, but that was the closest thing to Asian anything I can do was Asian American, East Asian Studies. Yeah, but there was no Asian American anything except for a minor, and there were classes, but there was no major. So I was bogged down with East Asian Studies classes. And the only Asian American Studies classes I took was when I went to SF State. I took only, I think almost all for one semester, Asian American Studies classes. I think I took 3 in a semester, and then I took 1 film class.
Wow.
Those are valuable though. That 6 months there is pretty valuable. Yeah.
Hear that? Stay in school, kids.
Oh, I think my college journey was actually pretty good, like in terms of education wise, like not bad. You know, I mean, some people say, oh, I didn't learn anything, or I didn't do this or that, or I don't use anything. I mean, the stuff I learned from junior college all the way through, I think was pretty rad. Like rad stuff. You know what I mean? Like every step of the way was pretty rad, except maybe chemistry class. Well, that's a waste. The physics class, whatever, right? Not for me. Like all those things, but I think all the stuff that, I don't know, any kind of like studies with humans in it. Not that humans aren't involved in physics, but I mean, those are like mostly numbers and stuff like that, right? I just feel like anything with like a history to it was amazing.
Okay,
Yeah.
now let's hear about your journey is about to diverge. You can either get on the plane, do the jet program, or bring your photography skills to Larry Flint, and Larry Flint wins out.
Oh man. So I decided that's a good one, because instead of going to Japan, because I kind of thought about it, and I'm like, if I go to Japan, I did 6 years of college technically. It took 4 years worth of college in 6 years, although I think that was worth it. Going to Japan was like another year of kind of not doing something that I might want to pursue long term. Like teaching English in Japan, I don't think was going to be what I wanted to do for a long period of time. Even short term, I don't think I wanted to teach English in Japan for like a few years. No, it was almost like this temporary thing that I was, it wasn't really, I just didn't see like, why would I want to do that? It was almost like that would be a gap year. And I was like, I already took gap years. I don't want to do another one. And I actually got accepted to JET, which was, I guess, really hard to do. But I remember I went through the interview and the whole thing. I did everything up to the moment of accepting it or not. Wow. And at the very end, I decided not to accept it, but I got in. And so I decided not to go. And then I was like, okay, got to do something here. And there became friends from UCLA. See, again, relationships matter. Friends from UCLA, 2 of them worked at Larry Flint. They got jobs at Video Games Magazine. And they were looking, they kind of had a little bit of control, but they were all really young, just recent grads. And let's bring Eric in. That'll be fun. Let's do it. And it's like that's what happened. And I got in there with, to me, still a very mediocre writing skill.
Oh,
I knew photography, but we actually didn't need photography so much. It was more writing. And I would say I'm pretty mediocre at writing at that point. But at this, and they were, I think they were really good, right? My friends were awesome. I read their stuff and I'm like, whoa, awesome, exciting. They're ready to take on the world. I was really bashful and I was like, wow, my writing sucks compared to these guys. So I naturally stayed away from any long form article. I was just like, I don't want to do this. And they were like, I want to do it. I'm just like, you do it. I'll write a review of a game, but I'm going to, I just wasn't ready to go long form. And they were writing longer stuff and they were really into it. Like just thinking of funny ideas in video games and then writing about it. And I was just like, my eyes were just wide open going, whoa, I was really influenced by friends of mine, which is kind of awesome, right? Having somebody your age be your influence. You know what I mean? Like right after college too. And I'm just watching them going, wow, they're coming up with these crazy ideas, super creative. And they're just like, I want to write an article about this weird idea I had relating to video games. And they would either get shot down or they would be able to do it. But the ideas were like definitely next level creativity. Amazing. I was so blown away by these guys. So that was really fun and also eye-opening where I was just like, whoa. Like,
I mean, were you even heavily into video games?
Not really. So, but I guess that wasn't the point. That the person who's heavily into video games, you're going to get another person that's just going to write the same ass review as the other person. They wanted somebody a little different, I think, to mesh with a team and be creative and have this, fun bond kind of, you know what I mean? I don't think being great at games or being that into it was actually a plus. I almost think that's might be a negative. If you're just a super game geek and you're not bringing anything else in, like we were in the video game office talking about punk rock half the time, like music, we're talking about that stuff. But I bet you other, like maybe Die Hard Game Fan or one of the other magazines out there that were, was it Game Pro? These are all other magazines.
Yeah.
They probably talked about video games, in their office, right? They talked about games. We talked about punk rock. We talked about hip hop, like what was really like cutting edge, weird, what we thought was interesting hip hop stuff and Moax records, for example. Like we were just into like just different things. And we didn't even talk about video games the whole time, maybe hardly at all, and that was the job part. And then we would blend things together. And that was kind of like this, what I saw, like hybrid, just mixing things. So I think, for example, we'd hear that some hip hop group was into video games. And we're just like, oh, they're into video games. Let's put them in, the magazine, however short, like even if it's a little tiny short piece, let's get that in there because that's so different than all the other game magazines. They were just talking about games, it's gamers writing about games, but there was no culture, like nothing different about it. And we were trying to we were adding culture to the games, right? Adding the connections that are made through games. And you don't have to be great at a game to play a game. The majority of the world probably sucks at games. And the top 1% of the gamers are what you see on Twitch. Not even 0.01%, right? That's on Twitch. And the ones who are shitty, that's everybody else. That's everybody else in the world. That's the other billion people who play games, right? So it's a big world out there. Other game magazines, that we were trying to be a little better than that or a little different. Maybe. That's kind of how I look at it. Looking back, I didn't realize that's what we were doing, but that's what we were doing. And that's how we met Jeremy Klein, the skateboarder from Hookups.
Wow.
He was a street skateboarder, right? Video game geek. He was so into video games. So we interviewed him for Video Games Magazine. And it was probably not this long article again, because we were so, there's so many things we had to do. But the cultural parts of that are just like, oh, pro skater who's into games. Let's talk to him. I don't think the other magazines did that at the time, and this is like in 1993. So game magazines were mostly writing about games. And
then so later on,
what's good about it, what's bad about it. But ours was more like, okay, we do that. And then we also go talk to Jeremy Klein, the skateboarder, about video games and what's his perspective.
And then
He
later
eventually
on,
worked at a game company. Like he eventually got a job
what?
at a game company.
Wow.
Yeah.
But then hookups ends up being giant robots, stalwart back cover ad.
Yeah, for better or worse, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
so along those lines, I mean, is it while you're still there that like you're coming home at night and you're like, wow, I have all these ideas that aren't quite right for this game magazine. I'm gonna start this zine. Is that what happened?
I think being there and seeing, because there was also like the one thing that was interesting is the office was 3 people, me, myself. Well, the office of, we were the lowest level there. It was my friend Nikos and my friend Betty and myself. We shared one office room. There was a publisher, separate office room. There was a higher editor. I don't know, maybe editor-in-chief had his own office. And then there was, I think, an associate editor had a separate office. And then the design department was sort of like the design department that designs all the magazines at Larry Flint magazines. All the non-porn anyway goes to one office, two or three people, and they design everything. But I realized, oh, the editorial is being built really by just a few people. Right? I mean, just a few people are making this magazine. And I was like, really? Like there isn't 25 people? There's, I mean, there's ad people, of course, and admin and all that stuff, but actual editorial was so tiny. The majority was being written by us 3. And that was crazy. I was like, wow, we're not even like super game experts, but we're writing a video game magazine and we can do this, like we can do this. So it was like that. And I was kind of like, that's where I started thinking, oh, well, maybe I can do something, right? Like this is where I started really thinking, oh, I want to, I can do this. Like this can be done without this gnarly staff that I thought a magazine would take. So there was this thing where I was like, oh, maybe it's time to just go for it, and make a zine or do something. But that was sort of like right at the end, I think I started making Giant Robot. I started working on it. And then I was like, I'm going to leave this place too at the same time. I mean, it wasn't to make Giant Robot, but it was just also like, man, this place is also, there's also like, the office politics that, you know what I mean? Just things that I was unhappy about in the office, things that were unfair, that are just continued to be unfair. And I was just like, wow, the justice is, this is just how it is in corporate America. There's no justice for those that like do everything the wrong way. And then I was just watching that happen all the time. I'm like, this is like, why are these people getting rewarded for doing all these things to me, like unethically or wrong? And I was just like, I can't, idealistic me was thinking this isn't for me. I'm just going to get out of here.
I mean,
And
so
then
many people.
stay, I mean, you just get rotted out after a while. You're just going to, really hate this job or hate the whole industry because of what you think's unfair. Or, you're just, if you have to stick with it because of it's your only job type of thing and what you do, that's tough on a person over time. If you do that for years and years and years of just getting upset and frustrated, it's not healthy.
Yeah, wait, let's talk about that ledge. So many people are afraid of, quitting the day job and just making that leap and doing their own thing. Was that something you really worried about a lot, or just like one day it was like no more?
I don't remember. It was so long ago, but I remember that it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, I'm going to get out of here because I just didn't like what I thought was that injustice. And I was on the edge of becoming a full-time employee. You know what I mean? Like I was technically part-time, but they make, part-time is still, it could be 30 hours a week or more. They just don't want you to be full-time to gain whatever benefits, et cetera, right? But I was on the edge of either going full-time or not, and I decided to leave. I was like, this is enough, like I'm good. You know what I mean? And I think my friends stayed around. They stuck around a little longer. But yeah, I was like, I'm getting out off of this, thing. So, and somebody else took my spot just like that, which is totally fine. And another friend, which is cool. Another friend was able to just step right in, which is all good, Yeah,
So
but it was one of those things I think luckily for me, I probably had alternatives. I could live at home with parents still. And I'm not like reliant on this job to survive, whereas some others maybe were, like they had to do it. I understand that, but for me, no, I didn't have to. So it was just like, okay, I'm off of this, Yeah.
So once you were out, was it like, all right, 60 hours a week in Giant Robot?
No, not yet. But
You know?
I mean, once it got going, I think I worked so I think at the same time, gosh, I don't remember. I worked at my mom's restaurant. She had a restaurant. So I worked at the restaurant, but then at the same time, I think I was just kind of hanging out and probably just kind of plotting, but quietly plotting. And then just started making zines, started making the Giant Robot thing. Like it was just one of those things that once I got started, it was run with it, run fast as I can, hard as I can into it. But it's still, there's no money, not even a cent. So the idea is just to do something. And but once I get going on something, and especially I think probably something made me upset, like I hate to say it, like some people, or maybe one impetus for me is don't make me upset, because if you make me upset, I'm going to outwork you, usually is what happens. So if you make me upset, I'm going to like, it'll be the biggest spark for me to do something. And it usually something that's going to be creative. And yeah, it's the wrong way to do things, but I think that's what it still will get me going. Like if you make me mad, I'm going to start grinding, and I'm going to like really work something. If I have an idea of how to solve a problem, I'm going to work really hard to solve this problem. And it's using anger, I hate to say. Yeah.
Some people call it the dark side, but I like to think of it as the Asian side.
It's very Asian American, right? Like if you think about it, why is Asian studies made? Bunch of angry Asian Americans, right? Just like,
oh, there are all protests, all crazy.
That's what I'm
protests.
saying. It's like you're mad, but then protest is fine.
Yeah.
But then it's start your own shit, start your own org, start your own this or that, which is a film festival. Maybe is it Asian American Writers Workshop at the same time? Like, is it every one of these orgs? And like, what about the film festival people in New York, Cinevision, like all of these
Asian Cinevision,
because of angry ass Asian Americans. And that's, maybe there's just a small group of people, but that's that same as that Godzilla publication, right? The arts Godzilla, that's from New York. Probably a bunch of angry Asian Americans said, fuck it, we can't get a leg up anywhere, we're going to do our own. That's sort of like that's like the history of probably America, not just Asian America, but as I see it, it's Asian America. And that's how all these film festivals started in groups. And Giant Robot, same way. I'm just looking at other Asian American magazines, the so-called magazines out there. And I was looking at that.
There are no other magazines.
I was getting mad. And then I think that's kind of what really is, that's the way I get going. Is it a dark side? I feel like it's really positive energy too, but it starts negative for me, like something that really pisses me off. And then it turns into very positive energy. Yeah, it's very kinetic. And then I start hustling, and I'll work people that way for sure. It's just like I'll work all day, all night, and just keep going because of that. And it's hard to sleep. You get really excited about it, especially as a youngster. Yeah, I can work all night, and it was just like, just to pursue something.
So was Giant Robot the first zine, or were there other prototypes, other subjects you had first?
I didn't. I think technically, Giant Robot was the first zine I ever made. I don't think I made other zines. Unless you're talking about some like, fold a piece of paper into 4 and cut the slots and then make a little. As a kid, I did that, but actual zine with like that actually, pretty much. Yeah, I did one in junior high, but I don't think that counts exactly. But I'm not proud of that one at all. But in terms of like, I think Giant Robot was the first zine. I contributed maybe to other ones a little bit here and there, but doing Giant Robot was first.
Okay, so you've made this one zine, and it's like photocopying and everything, and you just go door to door, just saying, "Hey, you going to carry this?"
There was that. Yeah. I mean, that's part of also the drive, is to find outlets. As hard as, I might have worked to make a zine, and figuring out how to get it done, where to print it, all that stuff. Yeah, finding out how to get it out there was equally, like, just as hungry to do that. And that's just like another gear. It's like, find, where the heck am I gonna like get this to, and how am I gonna get into people's hands, and all of that was just, again, hard work, but just every day toiling. I thought about, I mean, if I didn't work on it every day, I thought about it, but I probably worked on it every day. I mean, yeah, 100%. And that's barely what internet was kind of crappy still in 94 or whatever. Like, it's still crappy, but it existed. And it's just a place to start looking up things. If you can find anything, just try to get it out there. We didn't have a website, obviously. And I don't know, in 94, what did websites look like? Did they look like Craigslist?
Oh, no, I mean, like, you had, like, what was that, web crawler?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if like you land on a website, does it look like Craigslist? Like the way Craigslist looks
Yeah,
today?
it's like text. It's like,
It's sort of like that, right? It's like you just
yeah.
click, and I remember it being kind of bare still,
Mm.
but it's just finding anything out there. And that was it, and just hustling out to get it out there. But I don't think I had guidance, like another zine maker in 94. I didn't have help like that. I don't think I knew people that were really getting their zines out in 94.
I mean, but
I think it was just, the idea was to get it out to other publications to see if I can get reviews and get eyeballs on it. I think that was sort of the way.
I mean,
So
like,
yeah,
the
sent
punk
it out to a
zines,
lot of people, making a press kit.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing, right? All on paper, and making packages and sending them out.
Mhm. I mean,
And then
the
following
punk
up.
scenes, the punk scenes at the time, like MRR, Flipside, I mean, these are pretty huge around this time. And
Yeah.
they're pretty much everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, was that part of your thinking, like, that, I've got a outlet here, this can actually grow or something?
Oh, I mean, I like those, or I was looking at those, but they were technically one-dimensional, right? They're punk rock zines or magazines. And it was one of those things that it's like, well, I mean, yeah, it's inspiring. And to see that they can survive for a while without any budget, probably, or very low budget. And they're punk rock, but also kind of organized. Because, everyone thinks punk rock's sloppy and messy and completely dumb or something, like completely like not intelligible, and you look at those publications and you realize, oh, there's an engine there, right? There's something going on. And that can't be done by, being completely ignorant and unorganized and all that kind of stuff. So I think I looked at that too, as from a business angle, like how are these guys doing it? How are they surviving, or how are they making it? And I was just thinking, okay, this is something to aspire to, but there's so many other publications I was aspiring to, which is real magazines, right? I mean, there's zines, but there's also real magazines.
Wait, what's a real magazine?
I mean, at the time, National Geographic, right? Harper's, not Harper's Bazaar, but Harper's, kind of a writing one, right? There's Utne Reader.
Utne Reader.
Yeah.
I think people would be shocked to find that Utne Reader is something that Giant Robot aspired to be.
I don't know if I aspired to it, but I looked at it. I aspired to National Geographic. I mean, even magazines like Rolling Stone and Details, right? They were like things that I looked at. I was still looking at those magazines. And then there's the better ones of that, like Loaded from England, right? That was a good one. Wired was interesting back then. Mondo 2000, Bay Area, right? San Francisco Magazine, right? These are all things I looked at. And then I looked at the Asian American ones too. I looked at those. So I was checking it all out, but I think all these magazines mattered. So I was looking at everything, and including stuff like Comet Bus, Dishwasher. You ever seen Dishwasher? And what's it, Answer Me, which was like, you ever see Answer Me? It was a punk rock zine.
I didn't see that one. No.
That one's really grim. Like that one's very violent. It's very violent. And I think the editor of that actually went to jail. Eventually he went to jail. he was not a dummy. Like he was a good writer.
Yeah.
But it was very violent and kind of angry. And it was called Answer Me. And I looked at that and I was very inspired. Like, it was amazing. And he was very honest. truthful, but he ended up being like, I think he was like, I don't know what that guy does now. Was he edgy white supremacist maybe? His name was Jim Goad, Goad. And the ironic thing is, met him, and first thing is, he was like, Giant Robot, love your magazine, love your zine or magazine. And it was a zine then, and he knew a lot about it. And I was like, whoa, this guy that like scares me from his writing actually like complimented Giant Robot and liked it and was just like really encouraging.
Huh.
Yeah. But I think he's kind of edgy, maybe not white supremacist, but kind of pro-white, let's put it that way. I don't know. You know what I mean? That weird space of it's kind of a weird space. Like he might have maybe he has a Confederate flag, but he probably has an educated, rational reason why he would have one. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't doubt it, right? I could be wrong about all of that stuff because I don't know, but he eventually went to jail and got in trouble and all this stuff too. Yeah, but at the same time, no, I was just like inspired by what he was doing. Like, this guy's making a magazine publication. So I tried.
Okay, so let's talk about the early days. Like you're trying to do something, and how do you get a group of like people who like share common interests and like either working in one direction or maybe it's in every direction and just trying to capture everything?
I think it was every
How
direction.
did you decide what was going to be in that first issue?
I think the idea in the beginning was like it was a little more open participation and less editorial vision, because some of the things that are in there, however important they are and however important they became and maintained themselves to be really important, maybe like a few years later, I was like, no, we're not going to do those things anymore, right? It was part of became part of the editorial vision. But in the beginning, for sure, it was very open. It was open to like political viewpoints. Political viewpoints a little bit, fun stuff. I mean, it was a little more open to more things like that. Very Asian America in the end.
Oh,
and
was there a requirement that it be related to Asian America or just good?
I think the requirement was that you be into indie rock or punk rock. That was sort of like the requirement it's more of a person, less what you're going to write. I think it was more like that. But once you have that kind of background, you might lean politically in the same direction and you might have like a lot of similar interests anyway. But I think that is kind of where it probably lies underneath, is that. So if you were like an indie rock kid or an indie rock person, punk rock person, that was kind of like, I think the things that maybe what everybody kind of shared, which is interesting, right? It's not a frat house or you know what I mean? It's not like all these, it's not from like other social groups. It's from like maybe anti-social groups. I think that's kind of where it all starts from. And it's not trying to be different. It's just not fitting into all these other categories is probably what it really is, or what it felt like anyway.
So it was like, hey, this guy's in a fog hat. He's out of here.
I mean, you could be into Led Zeppelin. I think that would be okay. I don't know about fog. I mean, fog hat. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe fog hat's okay too. But Winger, no.
Oh, man.
Maybe no.
No, definitely no on that one.
Right? Maybe no. Black Crows, maybe no. You know what I mean? Like there's a limit there, I guess.
I mean, anyone on a major label, even Husker Du at this point.
Yeah, but Husker Du's still pretty well. Wait, this is 94.
Yeah, I mean, they're gone, but
Yeah, I was like, maybe not at that point, but I mean, indie rock and stuff and punk rock was still strong in 94. I mean, it was just different. I mean, there was Soundgarden, their major
Nirvana,
label.
Alice in Chains, geez.
I was not the big Alice in Chains fan, but yeah. But yeah,
that was, as I said, this is kind of around the early rumblings of like Brit rock destroying punk rock.
Maybe it did, because there's a point where I stopped being as into it, but I think, I mean, at that time, that was kind of, that was the music that I liked, was all this kind of indie rock, punk rock stuff. And maybe it was like some hard rocks, and noisy rock. I mean, just all different kinds of genres of it. But all those little bands were getting bigger and getting signed to major labels, and most of the time failing. Right? A lot of people made one album on a major that it just didn't work out. And maybe they're beloved today more than ever for some of these bands.
Oh, well, one major factor was that My Bloody Valentine took forever to do Loveless and bankrupted Creation. And so that killed so much indie rock,
That was my probably, like, ultimately out of all of it, that's probably my favorite band of all time.
See,
After all the punk
everybody
rock,
says
all
that
the
now.
stuff, My Bloody Valentine is probably my favorite of everything.
Everybody says that now, but if you put up money for this band to record, you'd be in bankruptcy.
Probably. Yeah, gosh, man, I was so into that, and I don't want to be that guy, but I was into it. I have it on cassette, let's put it that way. I have Loveless, Isn't Anything, and is it Tremolo or something, or Glider?
Yeah, those are EPs.
Yeah, the Glider EP, I have it on cassette.
Okay, so
Loved it.
along these lines of like doing something daring and original and with a vision and like failing miserably, how come Giant Robot didn't fail? How come it didn't? How did Giant Robot tap into something and just really get all this momentum?
What era?
Let's say the first color zines, the first color issues.
I mean, so one thing that people kind of don't know is, like, a lot of people think, they'll ask, how long did it take to become a magazine, right? Like, that actually didn't happen for a long time. That might have been years, like 5-6 years or something, because we were black and white. We had a color cover, and the inside was like newsprint still, right? Then it was like, okay, we're going to do 4 pages of color inside, but everything else is black and white with a color cover, right? It's almost like disguising the fact that we're trying to be a magazine, but we're still a zine, can't afford to do all color. And I think that was sort of the way Giant Robot went. So even that question's difficult. Like, I don't even know when we were all color, but maybe it's more of a mental switch. Like when we tried to be more of a magazine, maybe. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't even know. I mean, how did it survive? I mean, that's indomitable spirit. I don't know. I mean, it really is. It's definitely flying close to the sun and burning a little bit here and there, right? It's going close as you can to like injuring yourself, in working hard, right? That's sort of it to me. Like, I hate to say it, like, I would work all day, work all night, and to learn something to make it better every time. Like, I bought one of those Quark Express books that was like that thick, and I went through every page and learned it by myself, right? Just studying it, because I didn't go to school for that, and I was just like learning it, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, that's how much I was into it, is willing to work that hard. I'm like, I wouldn't do that today. Like, buy a 500-page book and go through one at a time to learn everything. Like, I was into that, willing to do that.
Well, see, you wouldn't do that today because you're not as angry as you used to be.
Exactly. Yeah, don't make me mad though, because I'll do it, if I have to. But at the time, no, I was pretty passionate and angry about stuff. So I wanted to like be the best I could be, and make Giant Robot best as I could make it. But that was like the fire was just more being, like pissed off at stuff. Yeah, literally, that's just weird, right? Like, wow. Like, that's the young me, is just being that angry that I'm willing to like do all that, and yeah. And just stay home all the time, which was kind of a lot of it, was just be home all the time because I'm working on it, and willing to just sacrifice everything to work on it, Yeah.
I remember, like, okay, for me, like, Giant Robot took a huge step up when it had Maggie Chung on the cover.
Yeah.
It was like glossy by that point.
Yeah.
And like,
that was really glossy.
Yeah. And at my day job, this white dude comes up to me and goes, "I've been reading Giant Robot." I was like, "What?" you don't deserve to hold that thing. You know what? And then
Wow.
you're coming up to me to talk about it. And like, so he shows me this issue. I was like, no, you
Wow.
shouldn't have this. This is like
That's
something for
amazing.
me, not for you.
It was for him too.
Was it?
Giant Robot, I think in the beginning, our audience was mostly in the beginning, I think our audience was like still more non-Asian American in the beginning because it was punk
Wow.
rock kind of a vibe, right? It was getting
Wow.
out to like punk rock kids. And there were some Asian Americans, of course, but I would say it was less than 50-50. Like there's less Asian Americans into it till later. And then Asian Americans a little more, but we always had a non-Asian American audience too. It was both.
Wow. It was really different in New
Yeah.
York because like to be reading Giant Robot, you had to be Asian, and you were probably into punk rock too. But you
Yeah.
had to be because it was like
Yeah.
at the Asian American like places like Asian American Writers Workshop,
Yeah.
Asian American Arts something.
But that's
Arts
like
Alliance,
made me, oh, it was also at See Here. Did you know what that was?
Yes, because I would go to See Here to pick up like Big Takeover and Chemical Imbalance.
It was there then too. It was there at the beginning. I think See Here probably took the very first issues.
Did you know
And
See
Mondo
Here?
Kim's, it was probably at See Here before it even got to some of these other places. It might have been See Here first.
But See Here was like 4 doors down from the Asian American Writers Workshop.
I didn't even know that. And the rad thing is Takashi Murakami bought Giant Robot at See Here, I believe.
Wow.
Because he described the place and he described what it was like. And I was like, that's See Here. And that's probably the only place that I, recall having it at that time. And he bought the first issue. Like he remembers the first issue and he bought it there. And he said it was like on one of his first trips to New York.
Wow.
So
I
just
love
randomly,
See Here.
like,
That
he
was such
bought
a
it.
great store. Amazing.
Yeah. But then they ended up like owing money to everybody. Wait, hold on for a moment. I'm going to shut this door real quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Eric has
They ended up owing money to a lot of people. And the
Uh.
funny story is I had because they started owing money and they wouldn't pay, like they would lie, right? Typical. I mean, just probably bad management. I remember this was later on. David Cho, this is before he was famous David Cho, but I've known him since he was in college. And he went to New York, and I told him, hey man, because he was good at thieving. And I told him, hey, these guys owe us money. They're not paying us. And I said, hey man, can you go and grab Giant Robots for me off the shelf? And he went in there and just totally just said, I'm taking these. You owe money, and I'm taking these. And he took them off the shelf and said, you're not going to get these. I'm walking out the door. And he did that. And it was pretty awesome, And that was the thing. And then they, of course, contacted and said, oh, you're just sending people in to steal stuff like that? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, we have more issues in the back. And I was just like, well, are you going to pay for this or what? And I think that's when they probably paid because they just realized, that stuff like that's going to happen. It's one of those things you just can't, I don't know. It's just not cool to do that. So yeah, that was retaliation. So I thank David Cho for that.
That was some street justice right there.
Pretty much, but I mean, that's kind of like what we're willing to do or what I'm willing to do. Is like have somebody do that for Giant Robot. Yeah, I was willing to do that. So that's kind of like bold. That's a decision made from the top. I guess that's me. So but that was a decision to do that because they owed money and they wouldn't pay. And they, so it's like, but that's that's the world of distribution, publication, retail, and you know what I mean?
I mean, for record distribution too. So many distributors collapse and then all these indie labels end up folding.
Dude, same thing with magazines or even small magazines. They would have, distributors would collapse and not tell you, of course, that they're having any kind of financial problem, just even forecasting it. So you're just they're getting deeper into debt and then they're not paying. And then you're just like, whoa, you owe me for 3 issues or something and you didn't pay, you know what I mean? But that's the timing is basically for magazines or publications, you might get paid. I think it's 210 days after your magazine is done selling, off sale. then plus 210 days, right? That's like 2/3 of the year. Imagine, like, so you do what, 3 magazines in that time, maybe 3 or 4 issues, and then they owe for all of that. And then they go bust. You don't get paid for all of that, right? And that's what happened to Punk Planet. They kind of,
Oh,
I think that was one reason they folded, is they got screwed on distribution.
oh.
Somebody collapsed, and then they got screwed, didn't get any money, and they collapsed there.
Punk Planet was a big zine too.
Sure was, but that was an example. It's like, you know, they got screwed, and it happened to Giant Robot too. Same distributor. But yeah, we survived, but they didn't. It sucks though, right? I mean, that happened more than once. Like, I think a distributor collapsing. Maybe it happened 2 or 3 times through the history of Giant Robot. I remember where a pretty big distributor just collapses and then owes you money, because you have to have distribution, or else it's not going to work, at least at that time. And yeah, isn't that weird? Like, one collapses and you immediately have to go to another one, hoping they don't collapse. And then they do, and then you're like, well, I got to go to another one, right? And then they collapse, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? You know, but that's sort of the world of publications and distribution. It's terrible. I'm sure it's the same as you said, record labels, same thing, or records, probably the same thing. Yeah. And then they do, you know, it's all stacked up against a publisher. It's a really bad business. And the distribution of publications is a horrible business. I mean, maybe books are different, but you know, like magazines, which are more, I guess, are timely, right? They have an expiration date, kind of, whereas maybe books don't quite as much, but you know what I mean?
I don't know. My old Giant Robot issues haven't aged at all. They still inform me.
That's cool. I think they're kind of written for that. I mean, there's some evergreen material in there. I like to think. I think that was kind of important for Giant Robot, is a little bit of evergreen material, because we're not a weekly magazine or monthly. We were at the strongest time, we were bi-monthly, so every 2 months. So that means when you're writing something, it better last for 2 months, because it's going to come out, and it might be, you know, whatever your topic is might be already gone, but hopefully it's evergreen, you know.
So during the PBS episode, the documentary on Giant Robot, I was struck by you and Martin talking about how, you know, when you really had the momentum and really going through it, and like you guys are just like, you know, man, these issues, I barely remember them. Like, did you feel like at that point, you know, meeting an issue every 2 months, that's a tall order for even a super well-staffed magazine? You know, you guys always had a pretty small crew. I mean, could the same amount of like anger and care go into each issue by that point?
I think care goes into it, but I think eventually there's, you know, as we age too, you're not going to get the same kind of topics, and things won't be as hands-on. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be able to like get involved with what the article was, because in the beginning, everything was almost through experience. Like, whatever the article was, it was something that maybe I went to, or maybe Martin went to, or somebody, another writer went to it, experienced it, wrote about it. And that was kind of how it was. And eventually later, it becomes less like that because of the timing. You can't just go out and write 6 articles and be involved with every one of those in 2 months. It's just not going to happen. But you know, you might write about it, but you just won't be as in depth with it, because you just can't. And that was kind of how it was.
But you know,
and maybe because you're less, but that's part of it, right? If you're less vested into it, or less experiencing it at the same time, I mean, you'll forget about it because you weren't there, or you weren't as, you know, you weren't as present as you were in previous, way back when there was 4 issues a year or 3 issues a year, or every one of everything was completely an experience. Yeah, maybe that couldn't be done when it was 6 a year. That's one of the hard parts of it being a business, is the reality of that you have to do 6 a year, or else how are we going to make enough money to pay for anyone's salary, you know, much less mine, but anybody's. How's that going to happen? You have to come out more regular and get paid regular. and make more ad revenue and all that kind of stuff all goes hand in hand, right? Like
Mhm.
more sales, more ad revenue, more this, more that, and all that. It just has to, just everything has to be a little bit more for it to survive 6 times a year. And then you look at other magazines and they're doing 12 a year, and you're just like, holy shit, like, how are they doing that? But they have a bigger staff, and maybe they're funded by a publisher, and there's a lot of, there's ad sales that are just group ad sales where, you know what I mean? Like one company will advertise in 10 magazines and you get a free ride, right? If you're one of those magazines. Doesn't quite work like that for in our space. We had to struggle for every ad. It just seemed like. So that's a tough way to go, but that's sort of the reality of making a magazine. It's
Well, the thing is
definitely
about
not a good vocation. I wouldn't suggest it to anybody. I mean, I think owning a restaurant might be easier, actually. And they say that's hard, right? I know that that's hard, but I think that might be easier than making a magazine. I mean, look how many restaurants there are out there, and look how few magazines there are. There must be a reason.
I don't know, where I live in Brooklyn, I mean, there's like
There's
this
a lot of
cursed
magazines?
stretch of block where like every single it seems like a restaurant can't last a year. You're
Well,
just
there's
gone.
also, I mean, there's also like, yeah, there's reasons for that too. But show me where there's a bunch of magazines out there, period. There's not. I mean, I'm talking about today, but even back then, there's just less magazines. And zines, I mean, that's not a career, right? So it's just a really tough thing to try to do.
Oh wait, but there are like Substacks, right?
What's that?
Substack, that's like each individual author who says like, okay, I'm leaving
Oh,
journalism, but you can subscribe to my Substack.
oh,
and
you
support
mean
these
that's
stories
current
I do.
though, like
Yeah,
today, right? You're
yeah.
talking
There's
about the
more
ones with Substack.
Substacks now, so it's like,
Yeah.
you're not getting interference from the middleman who would otherwise reject this from their magazine. You can get this directly from me.
Yeah. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar does it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I understand. And there's people that write, yeah. And you could pay, right? You can actually subscribe and stuff. Yeah, there you go.
But
don't need a
it may be
magazine.
just one step away from OnlyFans,
Yeah, like it's kind of is like one, right? It's just basically a personal subscription that you are doing. It's like the same as what's that other thing called where you're supporting an artist and you pay them maybe
Patreon.
Yeah, it's like a Patreon. It's very similar, kind of a crowdsourcing way to go, right? Do you have one, by the way?
I don't. No.
How about an OnlyFans?
Yeah, that's under my handle, Eric Nakamura.
Oh, I thought it would be Robert Chow. Anyway, but even OnlyFans, I think there's a lot of non-adult OnlyFans stuff, right? Content that's just like people that are just doing video blogs. I know that exists out there because there's like MMA fighters that have OnlyFans that aren't doing naked stuff. It's just like their information, like here's techniques on jujitsu, right? Which some people probably confuse as adult themed anyway. Oh, well.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like, even though we have the pressure of doing an issue every 2 months, I feel like there's almost no filler in like Giant Robot magazine. Everything was something you genuinely believed in, and like, you weren't like padding it with anything. But along these lines, I mean, did the last days of the print magazine, what was like the kind of first sign that print was kind of going to dust a little bit?
Oh wow, we got to the end already of the magazine. That was quick.
No, I mean it can be. I like
we got to the end really quick.
Arc,
okay, so we went from zine to death of the magazine. Basically, no. I mean, it's one of those things where you started seeing I think video bloggers, right? People that are doing video blogs, Asian American video blogs, V-blogs, I don't know what you call them, right? They're YouTube stars, the new YouTube stars from 15 years ago, maybe. There's that was starting to happen. There's blogs just being written, right? Just text blogs being written. But then at that point, you started seeing circulation going down, stuff like Tower Records closes, Borders, was it Borders closes?
Yeah.
There's more who closes. was it Virgin Megastore closed?
Yeah.
Right. So I think hand in hand with all the music stores, all these closures started to happen. And then you realize, oh, there's less places that the magazine's going to sell. Then, you hear, okay, newsstands closing. Then, of course, distributors started biting the dust. And then you're just seeing your circulation go downhill, ad revenue going downhill. I mean, this is all within the last maybe 2.5 years from the end of the magazine, 2.5 years, maybe 3, but 2.5 to be safe, something like that. I remember noticing it and just watching it just kind of dwindle down. But, at first you're just thinking, oh, it's going to come back, right? You have this positive kind of vibe thing going on. It's going to come back. And also, don't forget, we had that. Is it the crash happens, the big economic crash?
Yeah.
Is it 2000? When did that start? 2008?
Yeah.
You're the businessman. The subprime stuff. Was that around 2008?
So the subprime mortgages started going down like 2007.
7, right?
First sign of it.
2007. See,
Yeah.
that's about 2.5 years from the end of Giant Robot. Right? It's Giant Robot's last issue is kind of around, well, it's somewhere around the end of 2010, but it probably should have, frankly, maybe I probably should have closed it anywhere from 6 months to a year earlier than the last issue is probably when I should have closed it. As the publisher owner, I should have just said no more. But it was just like, gonna keep going, man. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I think that's kind of the timing of it there. It kind of all aligns to that too. And then there's a re-education of everybody, many people in America, that you can get your content for free online. You don't need to buy publications anymore. Maybe we don't even need books anymore. There's tablets now, right? There's e-readers and stuff like that. Maybe you don't even need a print book anymore, right? That was kind of this whole theme at the time, was kind of this, there's the digital age is here, Amazon's here, bookstores are going to close and we're just going to do everything electronic. That was sort of like this mentality at the moment. Like, it was kind of the rhetoric anyway, was kind of being out there. And I think that kind of helped collapse kind of print a little bit for a while. And I think print, including zines, collapsed at that time too. It wasn't just magazines, but I think zines kind of died, and then they made a comeback.
Yes, but you have always had like other tentacles, shall we say. You're operating like stores and a gallery now, but you even ventured into doing a film. Do you want to talk about Sunsets at all?
That was in 97.
Yeah, but that's one of the formative films of Asian America.
Yeah, it was part of what was dubbed as the Asian American New Wave.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? Like, what a title. At the time, I think I hated it because the word new wave was in it. I was like, new wave? Like, what? I don't want to be new wave anything. But looking back, it's kind of a cool title. Asian American New Wave. That's kind of cool, right? It's like, whoa, what is that? But then you realize that was only talking about 4 films, right? It was 4 Asian American feature films. So Sunsets, although was not an Asian American story, was kind of mixed into it. But thankful for that anyway. It was cool. Yeah, looking back, pretty cool. I mean, it would be better if it wasn't in a way, but at the same time, it was. Whatever. It's all good. We had an audience because of that. Otherwise, maybe it would have made it and had no audience. But it was, more so like working toward like the Clerks thing, like trying to do something that was for anybody, not necessarily an Asian American audience. But I mean, that's where it found a home. So, well, but the story was kind of a universal, like, more influenced by indie filmmakers, Greg Araki movies, right? They're not necessarily Asian American, but they're just American tales. It's sort of like that. It was just meant to be a movie.
I mean, that's the most
important. It did get placed in Asian American land, but oh well. It's all good.
So, like, let's talk about from where you are now. I mean, does it feel like, just talking about everything that happened, like old familiar kind of ground, or like you find new threads that are actually bringing you into the future as well?
You mean talking about it now?
Yeah.
Oh,
It doesn't feel like something dead. I mean, you're less angry now, but you're still kind of like the same guy, right? Like just kind of, I mean, you're looking towards like finding what's good, having that taste.
oh, for sure. Yeah, I would say different because I'm not trying to run out and discover things necessarily every day. Because I think a lot of things are, I mean, because of internet, it's just being discovered everywhere all the time. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like if there's no end to it, and it's there's people who are doing it very fast. I mean, that would have been me if internet was around exactly 20 years ago or 25 years ago. That would have been me probably finding stuff every day and putting it out there, right? That would be like my job would be to do that, or my passion. But maybe today it's a little different. I mean, I'm still trying to do things, but it's less trying to be first at things, and and maybe just trying to be really good at all the things as best I can. But it's less trying to be like a race for whatever. Is it credibility that ends up happening with it because you were first and discovered this or wrote about this thing first? I mean, I have no interest in doing that and trying to like, kind of like write about a topic or a culture or something like that. But at the time, I think it was also new and there was no way to learn about anything, that I was learning it at the same time, right? So it's my education. And then I'm just capturing it by writing articles, as was Martin and whomever else wrote for Giant Robot. We're discovering things and really passionate about them. And it was 1.0, it was the discovery of it all, sort of, right? It existed, but it was not being documented.
mm,
And I think there's a lot of things that maybe we were among the first to write about ever. And then lo and behold, today there's 10 generations of blogs about the same thing. And
mm.
a lot of topics. I mean, tons of topics. And then there's like ways to look at old topics. Like there was so many, like, is it that there was always like the Asian female white guy, kind of like there was like that kind of like angry Asian American rhetoric kind of at the time, maybe in the late 80s, early 90s.
I'm like, I knew people who, whenever they saw an Asian female, white male couple, they would just boo them loudly in public.
Yeah, right. It
Like,
was like a thing, but I remember it was talked about forever, and then it gets talked about again and again, and it's always the same. It's always the exact same comments. And I remember I don't think I ever wrote about it in Giant Robot necessarily, but I remember that my thought of it was, if that becomes an article in Giant Robot, it's going to be the last one written about this topic. Like no one's going to write about it again, because we're going to either solve it or have the solution, whatever the answer is, whatever postulate there is, it's going to be the end. We won't, and I don't think there was an end, so that article never got written. But I was thinking about like why and how, and just getting the answer, not just complaining, because everything's always about complaining. My anger is always about coming up with a solution. So if I was angry about that enough, I would have come up with a solution. I don't care what it was, but it would have been a solution. But I've never read a solution. It's always the angry, like, oh, this is happening. It's still happening, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to end it. And here's the article. Don't read anything else. Read this. You're not going to ever want to read about it again or hear about it because it's done, right? That's kind of how I was approaching articles. I wanted to like end it right there, That was sort of like a lot of articles were like that. Was like, okay, we're gonna pursue this topic. This is gonna be an end. Like we're gonna write about it and it's gonna be the end. Like you don't need to read about this for years because it's done. You know what I mean? That's kind of like how a lot of articles were approached. And maybe some things were done too much, but that was kind of one way to go about pursuing articles, was coming up with more than just the article. It's coming up with, an actual solution that can benefit everybody or answer a question that everybody's asking. I wanted to be that publication that gets to do that, or has that power or strength or mindset, the intelligence to try that. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I wanted to do with a lot of articles. It's not just highlight, look how cute this is, right? That's kind of what TikTok is. No, the idea was more, was go beyond it. And, that's sort of the giant robot way for a while was like that.
I mean, when I think about the giant robot gallery and like having an artwork there, it's like it's kind of more definitive than an article and even less so. It's because visual art is like an ongoing kind of conversation about something. And a piece done 20 years ago might shed new light on something when you seen in today's context.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think of it that way though. I just kind of like, I think with art, it's one step forward at a time. You know what I mean? Like I'm not looking back with that at all. It's mostly just going forward, I think. I think that's kind of how I look at it. It's one direction, just go straight and keep on going kind of a thing. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't think of things that way too. Even with a magazine, I don't think of backwards too much. I mean, I'm not a, yeah, I lack the nostalgic gene, I guess. You have a gene of nostalgia, right? I kind of don't have it necessarily with Giant Robot, at least, because I lived through it maybe. So I don't really look back longingly. Those were the days, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't really have that, unfortunately. And the documentary that came out, I mean, it's filled with that, right? And it's like viewers are very passionate that love Giant Robot. I mean, there's people who cried watching it, right? They cried.
Yeah.
And even at the premiere panel, people were crying. Like a lot of people were crying. And I was like, wow, like that impact is there. But I was like, what are you crying about? I mean, I get it, but I couldn't shed a tear on that. Or I can't.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I can't. I have no like, there's no, I don't know. I can't even make myself do it.
Well, I kind of feel like the readers never got closure. That's an important part of like having an emotional relationship with something.
Oh, but there's no closure needed. I'm still here, baby. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's just the gallery in the store. I mean, it's just because I guess I keep working, right? I keep going forward. And for some, the magazine was the end, right? For Giant Robot, it's just the magazine stopped. That's the end of Giant Robot. It's gone. For me,
with a lot of younger people now,
it's a one line that keeps on going,
with a lot of younger people now, when I'm wearing my Giant Robot gear, they're like, oh yeah, that's a really cool store, or that's a cool gallery. And like, I'm talking to them and like, they never even knew there was a magazine.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. It's kind of funny, right? It's like, then you see like, oh, all that hard work and nobody even knows what it is. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of the things that really like that I'm always like, whoa, like I don't get upset, but I'm always thinking, wow, that sucks. All the work that got put in, so much effort, and then people just don't even know it existed. I always feel like in the end, we were always the underdog, right? Giant Robot was the underdog. I mean, it was always an underdog thing. It was beneath the radar. It was counterculture. It was definitely not the mainstream thing. Although I think that our ideas and things that we wrote about, so much of it became mainstream. It's like canon of pop culture. It's what it is, right? It's what it is today. And but ultimately, no, I always feel like if I want to get into that, does Giant Robot deserve more credit? Yeah, man. Even with the documentary coming out, I feel like it's still hardly being watched. And I feel like we're still the underground, like little secret that existed, came, and it's gone. And I mean, I'm good with it, but in the end, I always feel like, God, there should be more to it than that. But the documentary is awesome. But then, yeah, again, it's like, well, are people watching it? Most people haven't even watched it who come to the store. They don't even know it exists. Like if I ask a customer that really likes Giant Robot and seems to really like look at and like everything, I'll go, did you know there's a documentary? And they're like, really? Like it's 95% of the answer is really? I didn't know. And that's frankly how it is still. Like to this day, people don't know.
So to bring things full circle, I saw you in August, and one of the zines that you had recently done, I picked up, and you were speaking earlier about your early photography, and like you took all these pictures. It didn't really mean anything: beer bottles, insects, flowers, and yet you were like, I wish I took more pictures of people. And this zine is filled with pictures of people, like in your family, in your community, and you talk about the stories of them. Does this represent a new way of looking at life for you?
Oh, for me,
Yeah.
uh, I don't know about a new way. Maybe it's just the way. I mean, in the end, it's family, friends, community is kind of, to me, the most important thing, I think, out of it all. And having that in a zine form, sure, why not? But it's very personal in the end. It's I don't really share those things too much, as much anyway, as in social media. Just a little. I have my own like Instagram that's under my name and that's for film photography photos. But ultimately, yeah, like I don't share much like on Facebook or all those things. Or it's all work tools, but none of that is really personal, except for maybe that Instagram where I'm sharing just my black and white photos. And even then, there's so much I don't share. Like maybe I'm sharing 10% and the 90, I'm just like, no, that's just for me, right? I'm not going to share it with anybody. You know what I mean? Like I'm not really interested in sharing it with people. But I think when I was the only way, so like people still write Facebook posts and they really get into here's what I'm doing, and they get into like here's what's going on, and I don't do that. I stopped. I don't do that at all. It's all work tools related. But then yeah, I think most of that is just for me. Like that's kind of how I look at it. And maybe if I make that zine and you pick it up, okay, there it is. I don't advertise it. But yeah, if you pick up the zine, you might get a little bit of a view on it. But yeah, I think that's kind of how I was looking at it. Oh, then I was doing live streaming, right? I was doing live streaming for 3 years during the pandemic, I guess.
Wow.
And if you wanted Giant Robot and my opinions, you'd have to just tune into those and you would get it. And those were not recorded.
Oh, wow.
So they were live streams, and I was doing that. And I did that for about 3 years. And that where I felt like that was like pure unfiltered everything. If you wanted unfiltered me and Giant Robot and stories, it was there. From like the most embarrassing and whatever, it was all in there. And again, it wasn't recorded. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, there was an audience for that. During the pandemic was perfect time, right? People are at home. So I was streaming sometimes 8 hours a day.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I was telling stories, but there was a lot of things going on in those streams, but yeah, it was, and I would interview people. It was kind of fun. But yeah, it was meant to be a live thing. So, but yeah, I'm just less into like sharing that stuff. Maybe I should get back to it, but it's so hard to get back to it. Like, do I want to do that? Like, here's my dog, and here's what my dog likes to do. And I mean, some of it's profound to me. I'm like, whoa, the dog's doing that. But then I don't know. Maybe it's only for me. I tell the stories to myself in my head, but I'm not like trying to make a publication or be a, what is it called? Influential person or whatever it is. I'm not trying to do that. I mean, technically with Giant Robot, I guess, and maybe I was, whatever, publisher Giant Robot. I can do that, but I mean, I read a lot of other people's stuff, and then sometimes I don't get mad. I'm just more like, oh, like I don't, like I'm reading it thinking, oh, this isn't. I just don't want to be that person that does that. But I could easily do it. Like I can spout wisdom when I see stuff. You can too, but you know what I mean? Like I can easily spout sage 53-year-old person wisdom on many topics, especially ones that I lived through, right? All the Giant Robot stuff. I can spout on so many of these topics and what came out of it and what I learned of it. And including like, let's say the band photos I shot so much, I can post a photo and write my memoirs of it. But nah, I'm not doing it. Like I could write a summation. What did all this mean, right? And I can get into it and what is its value? But yeah, I don't know. Something about it. Maybe is that imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome? If you feel like you're, I don't know.
Actually, well, that's a word that's kind of new to me. But is that what imposter syndrome is? Like I feel like I don't want to be the person that does it.
Oh no!
But I mean, I lived through it, but I don't want to be the one that writes about it.
Oh my gosh! I shouldn't be running this store. I don't know how to run the store. What am I doing here?
Oh, it's not quite that, I guess. But I feel like I don't want to be the one that does all that necessarily.
Maybe that's humility.
Maybe Is that what it is?
It,
Humility.
it could be. It's a
Because
very
sometimes
good
I
read
read
to
some
have.
of it and I'm just like, this sounds really like not true. Like this doesn't sound like it's from the heart from somebody, but it seems like something they read in a book and then they're just spouting it or something. I don't know. I just look at that and I'm always like, I'm kind of torn between writing all that stuff again, or writing again, I guess, which is why every time I see you, do you realize I ask you, how do I write a book? That's like one of my dreams, is to write something, a book, a publication. And I just don't, because I don't think I can get through what I feel about it all right now. You know what I mean?
I mean, and I say, like, don't think of it as a book. Think of it as like you're just writing captions and captions and captions.
That's what I write in those little zine thing that you picked up, right? They're captions. They're captions for the photos.
Yeah.
And
I mean, but the images are in your head.
I spend a lot of time. Well, it depends which one you got, but I painstakingly write those. They take a long time to write.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. But then what do I do with that? It's like the same thing. I'm just not sure how to tie it all together. But that's one of those things that I always think I want to do it. And then when it comes to it, I'm just like, I'm picturing myself and picturing somebody reading it and then picturing me and then me just going, dude, what are you doing? Like, don't read this. Read an Ed Lin novel, go read an Ed Lin novel. What are you doing reading this? Go read something else, read something of value. You know what I mean?
It's not about me. It's not about me.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? That's sort of like how I feel about it is like, why are you reading this, man? You could read 68 issues of Giant Robot. It's already out there. Do I have anything more I should be adding to this world of, text? Maybe, but maybe not, because I read other people's stuff sometimes and I'm like, why am I reading this? And I just, you know what I mean? I just can't do it all the time either. Like I myself can't read other people's stuff sometimes.
Yeah. But at the same time, you give space to people. And I kind of want to bring this to, maybe the end of our conversation is one of the first times that I read a Giant Robot, like afterwards, there was this other writer there who came up to you and said, hey, you know what? You should have like writing workshops in this space. And then you called him on it. You were like, okay, let's do it. And he was like, oh, me? I gotta check my schedule. And like, see, he wanted to like have it, but he wasn't willing to like put his shoulder to the wheel,
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like you've been the guy who said, all right, let's just get to it.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's sort of what I don't know. I just kind of I think a lot of things that I do is at this point relatively simple. Like things aren't that difficult, right? They shouldn't be that difficult, or they don't have to be that difficult. I think I went through so many things that getting from point A to point B there's no like little confusion getting there. It's almost a straight line these days. Like I think I can do a lot of things like that. But yeah, maybe a lot of people still can't, it's things get overthought but I mean, a writer's workshop, I want to join one. So I wish that person would have done it because I would have been student number one in that workshop.
You just said, right? So do it. And he was like,
oh, well, I can't do it. I want somebody else to do it so I could be the student. I want to be a pupil, not, you know what I mean? I want to be the pupil.
Man,
I want to be the one that learns. I want to start at the bottom.
Carl Greenfield.
What's that?
Carl Greenfield. He should do it.
That guy doesn't write me back, but I love that.
Okay, we're gonna edit that out.
That guy doesn't write me back. Carl, write me back, but he's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is not gonna do that. He won't do that. But I love that guy. Like, that guy is. That's like one of the. I think I mentioned it live, but he's one of like the genesis of Giant Robot. He's part of that creation story of Giant Robot. Is that I read that book, and that book was also read by the other two people in the video games magazine office, Speed Tribes. We read that book, and it was just like, whoa, like my brain was expanded even more. But that's kind of like definitely part of it. I think that book, maybe it was 95. I can't remember.
Speed Tribes. If you had done the JIT program,
we all read that book, and whether it was in the office time or was it just afterwards, I remember reading that, just being blown away. Anyway, so yeah, I don't think he's going to do a writer's workshop.
Well, we'll have him here on Quiet Before and see.
He's amazing. Yeah, he's amazing. But yeah, I don't know. That's one of those things. I just think of like doing things or doing stuff and maybe getting other people involved. And I still think creating community or working with community is the best thing to me. That's the most joy. I think I still get joy out of that. You know, it's the world that gets excited about something that maybe I'm doing. So maybe it's not something that I'm writing, but maybe it's the things that I'm doing. Like we do an art market where I get like 8 or 10 artists to bring their shit. They sell it in the store. They're there for a whole weekend, Saturday and Sunday, all day. Customers come in, they can, and I let them do it for free, and they keep all the money that they make, right? But part of it is the joy in bringing new people in who are like, oh, I'm going to go to this gallery and look at 10 different people's art, and the artist is going to be there, like standing right next to their art, right? That's a really fun, to me, a really fun day. And that's just like going to a zine fest and having 10 zine makers, let's say, and then you can just go and, you know, check out zines, right? It's just like doing those kind of things are really exciting to me. And that's just part of community building, I guess, but without really thinking of it that way, it's just doing it. And I feel like all the tools that I need to do this are it's already in hand. I already know how to do this, right? So it's just like coming up with fun ideas and projects and doing them, whatever they may be. And I don't know. Part of that's maybe just also, you know, kind of being creative and just getting out there and doing it. Because some of it's solving problems with creative ideas. I think there's always like ways to do things, and then there's always a creative way to do things that's like a little outside the box. So I think that's just the way I go, is just trying to think, okay, what's the normal way? Oh, that's boring. Let's think of it a different way. Like, let's think of what's another way to do it, but like 10 times more fun. What's that? You know, how's that going to work? Because sounds really boring, right? Let's make it fun. What is that? And that's sort of like almost everything goes through that filter, I guess, in me. So, and then if I can't, then okay, I can always fall back on the boring way. I'm like, oh, I'll just do it the way everyone does it. But there's always a creative way to me, like to make it one step better, even if it's just a little thing. That's just how I always go about. I think all of these things are always that way. It's just, what's the next level? Like level up, you know? Playing video games, same thing, right, Ed? Just next level. What is it? Fight the boss of boredom and take it to the fun level, right? Get past it and keep on going.
But you might need a secret code.
That was made in Tips and Tricks magazine, right? That was also that was like the brother or sister magazine to video games where I worked. Tips and Tricks. That was the magazine for all the people that couldn't play well, that you could just use codes and cheat your way forward, right? That was like the trick way.
I mean, Tips and Tricks sounds like it came from Hustler.
That was right. The title is literally everything's very literal there. So yeah, in that way, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, Tips and Tricks.
Okay. And maybe on that note, I would say thank you, Eric, for taking this,
you're welcome.
for talking and opening your mind to our many viewers and listeners.
Are they going to listen to this?
They may listen to it if their screen goes dark.
Oh my gosh!
They get tired of looking at me.
Like, what is this?
This is an amazing video blog. At some point, in some way, in some form, it will be available to everybody to listen / watch, or maybe put on a VR goggle and look at the screen through your eyes or my eyes. But in any case, thank you so much, Quiet Before, for making this space available, and we'll see you soon. Bye now.
See you. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Nancy.